For years now, since the advent of the ongoing Anglophone crisis, hardly have cultural festivities been organized anywhere in the Meta clan Mbengwi as used to be the case before. The palace of Guneku has, however, distincted itself from the rest in bringing back memories of the good old days by organizing a semi-cultural festival during which villagers were once again, after a long time, seen putting on traditional regalia, especially the famous togo. There were also traditional dances like kwem and the traditional meals like ntungomutar, that is to say, porished plantains. How did the event come about? It was on Friday, July 30th, 2021 that the newly elected councillors from the 20 quarters that make up Guneku village rallied in the palace to be officially installed after they were recently voted into office during an administrative reorganization exercise that was called for by the fund. For 2 weeks, the Electoral Commission toured the nooks and crannies of Upper, Lower and Central Guneku to coordinate the villagers elect their quarter councillors. It was this exercise that culminated to the holding of the mini-cultural event. Before the installation proper, some leaders, that is, presidents, secretaries and treasurers were first elected from the midst of those that had hitherto been voted in their respective areas or quarters of origin as quarter councillors according to the 4 zones in which the village is divided. The electoral exercise was conducted this time around using local materials like seeds of corn, beans and groundnuts in place of ballot papers, so much so that each candidate standing for election was represented by a seat, and the voters then proceeded to cast their votes for those they want by using any of the seats they each represent. After the electoral exercise and proclamation of results, the Commission then proceeded to do the installation proper of the newly voted zonal council leaders that automatically became members of the Guneku Traditional Council alongside a youth's representative, women's representative and all religious leaders shepherding God's flock in central Guneku. Some other 8 members of the Guneku Water Management Committee were also installed. One of the high moments of the event was an address by the fund based in Germany to his subjects. In his recorded message that was played from the sound system to the hearing of all, His Royal Highness Dr. Teacher Walters Fomoki began by first revisiting some of the developmental strides successfully recorded in the village under the palace ever since his ascension to the royal throne of Guneku. He cited the installation of a modern library in the palace, introduction of fish farming, rabbits, fowls and beekeeping in the palace and other quarters of the village, restaffing and re-equipping of health institutions in the village, rehabilitation of the road network in the village, reawakening of the once existing organization that was known as Funds Against AIDS that was and is still being headquartered in the Guneku Palace but now operating under a new name, just to name these few.
Presently, what we are doing now, we are restructuring the organization because Funds Against AIDS was created with a sole objective of fighting HIV and AIDS and nothing else. But now we have seen that other pandemics like the COVID-19. So we deem it necessary to restructure the organization and then increase the number of objectives. Now, because of the ongoing war that is taking place in the Northwest and the Southwest, and there are so many displaced persons, especially women and children, so we are equally lobbying for funding to cater for these internally displaced persons. Then we equally work with orphans and vulnerable children. And since it is an organization that has to do with education, we focus more on education of the children, especially the less privileged in the community, like even coming up with things like community library, where these children can go and sit and study. We equally provide assistance to these orphans and vulnerable children. We also encourage community to in sustainable income generating activity, especially the widows and the less privileged in the community.
Council can want to talk or any. Whatever the council way,
The Fon, in his address to his subjects, went on to make some appointments by maintaining Mr. Ndingwan Primus as chairman of the Guneku Traditional Council, Mr. Fodom Calvin as minutes and financial secretary, and Mr. Amamuki Jonathan as a treasurer, to facilitate the smooth execution of the various tasks expected of these traditional council executive members. The trio were each handed a brand new Android phone so that communication between the village, external elites and the diaspora will be eased. Moreover, a brand new motorcycle had also been provided by the Guneku Cultural and Development Association, Gudeka European Union branch, to the Traditional Council, with firm instructions for it to be used by the council executive members in running errands across all quarters of Guneku village. In the course of his address, which he did in the Meta language, Fonfomoki instructed that all land disputes will be handled only at the level of the Traditional Council, and that for the sake of sustainability and assurance of good quality supply, all pipe-borne water users in the village will from now henceforth be levied a token either monthly or annually, because according to him, anything that is free hardly lasts, and the tendency is always high for it to be misused. Talking about community work, he said from now onwards, those who will fail to show up when work is announced shall have their valuable materials or domestic animals caught and taken to the palace to be only released later upon payment of a fine to be levied by the Traditional Council. Same for villagers who will keep allowing their domestic animals like pigs and goats to go astray, eating people's crops on their farms. If after the given deadline the owner of the caught animal doesn't show up, they shall be killed and used to cook food for the next community work, instructed the Fon, a decision that was well applauded.
And by the next community work, the
Away from the Fon's address, another key moment that gave more weight to the event was the presentation of an echography machine to the public. Dr. Bernard Tangwang is the medical doctor of Open Door Medical Clinic, Njinaba Ekwata, Guneku Village. He explained to the population how the machine functions and what it is used for, and ended by encouraging all pregnant women within and out of the subdivision to visit the clinic during working hours to know the state of their unborn babies in their wombs. In addition to this, blood pressure monitors essential to preventing heart diseases and strokes were also distributed to all health units in the village. Away from the medical presentation, there was also an award of scholarships to some meritorious pupils and teachers of the newly created Presbyterian Primary School Guneku that scored 100% all in List A in the 2021 Common Entrance and First School Living Certificate examinations. Each pupil received an envelope of 40,000 francs. The entire financial package that was distributed to teachers and pupils of the Presbyterian Primary School Guneku amounted to about 380,000 francs, offered by Professor Tebo Roland, a US-based son of the soil. The most interesting part of the ceremony was the traditional decoration of Mr. Tayongfa Elvis, a journalist cum politician that hails from Guneku village, with the traditional title of Ngamfon, meaning the Fon's mouthpiece.
We are so grateful to give Mustafa Elvis the traditional title of Ngamfon for the good works he has been doing for Guneku village, for Momo division, for Northwest, and for Kamono Ateoro. What he has been doing cannot be quantified. And in the past, We're giving these titles only to people who were able to shoot lions, tigers, and bring to the palace. But now we're now giving these titles to people who can bring change, who can bring many more things, bring development. So he has actually done a lot for the Cameroon community at large. So we want to confer this title of Gamfon. That's his title anyway. It's a 3-star commissioner in our own traditional setup.
Cornered by Mbengwi online for a word after the recognition, he said,
I think that the title came as a surprise because in the course of the execution of my own duties, I was contributing my own small quota that I think I could towards the development of the village and also towards the promotion of the culture of the people of Guneku. Seeing it, it was quite more of a surprise, and I think that I appreciate the efforts put in place by the traditional ruler of this village, Guneku. And I think that it's more of an assignment given to me, that more work still needs to be done. So I think for the time being, I will be trying my own small best, while calling on other elites to also do their own quota. As I said, sometimes that it's not necessarily money. Everyone has been endowed with a natural quality from one way or the other, or in one way or the other rather, to carry on with the development of the village. So we have put our own small little ones. We know that others are putting theirs. And I think that all together is for the development of this village of Guneku.
Mr. Mbakwa Bernard, it should be recalled, was the team leader of the Electoral Commission that was put in place by the fund to go around all the quarters of the village and conduct the reorganization of the councils. Having done and dusted the assignment that culminated to the installation ceremony, he gave his general appraisals to Mbengwi online.
General evaluation stands about 95% from our own evaluation, because a few persons did not come. Yes, but 100%. All their fees plans were all executed. There was scholarship awards. There was traditional decorations, which I personally carried on behalf of the fund. There was installation of the village water committee, and there were some other things that were carried out. Yes, which you yourself have witnessed them all. Actually, there were challenges in that in some areas we never met people. But later on they came. So far now we have all the phase completed. The whole fundum has been covered. And all of what we needed has been done. So all the people selected to make up the village councils have now been made up. We now have good village councils.
Fon Fomoki now looks forth to begin working with the elected councillors in making Guneku great again, this by ensuring the provision of food, water, electricity, health, farm-to-market roads and other social amenities that can in one way or the other improve on the livelihoods and living standards of all the villages in all the quarters that make up Guneku, the biggest village in the Meta clan.